The Chargers just lost 16-22 against the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday Night Football. And there is a lot to talk about. Now, as you guys probably already know, unless you're new to this channel, I am a Chargers fan. And when I tell you this game was hard to watch, it was hard to watch. So like we do every single week, we're going to be going through my instant reactions to this week's game. If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe. But let's not waste any more of your time because it was rough. So, at the start of the game, we're used to the Chargers being bad, especially in the first quarter. But this week, thankfully, the Chargers would go out and score the very first possession. And I definitely thought that was going to be a good sign. Maybe this team finally got something going together. Maybe Joe Lombardi had figured it out. We'll talk about here in a little bit. I think Joe Lombardi got worse somehow. But, yeah, the first quarter was... A good first quarter was almost the death of the Chargers in this game, if I'm being honest. So, where do we start? I think we start with the offense. Actually, no. I think we start with the things that we are most used to. Injuries. 3 interior defensive line players for the Chargers went down today. I want to say Christian Covington went down with an injury. Titu Ogbonnia went down with an injury. Somebody else went down. Kenneth Murray went down for a little bit there. Justin Herbert was out for about 3 plays, which stopped the Chargers' scoring opportunity. They were at the 20-yard line when he was get pulled out by the referees. And, props to them, especially with the Tua incident, for pulling him and making sure that he is checked out. But the fact that it took them almost a full minute and completely derailed the Chargers' drive that was going pretty well for them, kind of bull crap there. I mean, the Chargers still get their 3 points of that, but how well they're moving the ball, I think that they could have easily got a touchdown, and you get a touchdown right there. Now you add 4 points to what the Chargers had in that scenario already, and guess what? You add 4 points to that. Now the Chargers are at 20 points, if everything else were to play out the same. Now the Chargers are at 20 points, and, maybe some things, especially late in the game, go a little bit different. You don't take some of those weird risks that do occur. But another thing that is kind of really common for us Chargers fans, sorry, I'm trying to fix the camera here, is coaching. Pretty all over the place coaching. And we definitely saw that today's game. Now, like I mentioned, the offense did start to get it going there for the most part in the first quarter, and the defense did struggle, for being honest. Now, they did fix it for the most part, especially in that second quarter and the third quarter. Now, the fourth quarter, after all the injuries, it started to go downhill. They were running the ball like crazy on the defense, and that's what's going to happen when you have Christian McCaffrey on the defense. But offensively, it looked pretty good, especially in that first quarter. But as as things went on, it went downhill very quickly. The second quarter, which the Chargers are number 1 in the entire league at points scored in the second quarter, I want to say Chargers scored like 6 points, and they're both field goals, including the one where Justin Herbert would get pulled out due to that concussion protocol, and Chase, what's his name? Chase, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I'm blanking on a name. The backup quarterback, it's not Easton Stick. Gosh, I am completely blanking. My apologies. It's a rough week. I'm very sick if you guys can't already hear. But including that one, Chargers only scored 6 points, I want to say. Maybe even 3 if that first field goal after the first possession was in the first quarter. I do not recall off the top of my brain right now, as I don't look at the stats. This is like instant reactions. I'm not trying to go too in depth. But and the shutout in the second half. The Chargers scored 0 points in the second half. And there's some pretty solid drives. They just couldn't get anything going. Multiple 3-and-outs like we've seen time and time again before this. The team just can't get going, and the play calling got worse and worse and worse. And speaking of play calling, let's go back to the possession where Herbert gets pulled out there, and you have your quarterback 2 in the game. And what do? You run 3 passing plays. And yes, the defense is definitely filling the box there, and they're expecting a run. They're putting a lot of pressure on, but they didn't even try to run it. Now, yeah, they still get the 3 points there, but Austin Eckler is an incredible running back, and he's going to be able to have an opportunity to break out some yards there. And if maybe you give him a chance, now I'm not saying the 1st and 10 you do it. I think that would have been a dumb idea, especially with how many times the Chargers were running on 1st and 10. But maybe you give it to Austin Eckler on 2nd and 10. Make it 3rd and a little bit manageable. Maybe even Austin Eckler gets you that 1st down just with how strong he is. I mean, truly, he could have easily got 10 yards with a couple people on his back if he gets good blocking there. But they passed the ball 3 times. All of them are within like 2 or 3 yards of the scrimmage. And, just from pretty bad play calling. And as it goes on, it seems like Herbert was pulled back a little bit once again, and he wasn't allowed to make these deep balls. Now, he did definitely have a lot more deep ball passes this week than he did previously, but I was hoping to see that continue, especially after that hot start in the first quarter. But it seemed like they pulled it again, where a lot of the plays were just right at the sticks and nothing too far past it, which I didn't like that much. Speaking of injuries, I completely forgot about this. Gerald Everett, I don't know what happened. I think someone said a groin injury was holding him out for most of that second half. That was definitely a huge part of this. Gerald Everett has been Herbert's almost, other than Austin Eckler, I think Gerald Everett's been Herbert's number 1 target, even when Mike Williams was healthy. Now, when Keenan's healthy, it's a different story because we've barely seen Keenan play. But Everett's been a huge piece of this offense, and he comes out, and this offense definitely died, but I wouldn't say it was because of the players. I think it's because of the play calling. I mean, let's look at this scenario. And let's just here, before we talk about the end of the game, which is where a lot of bad play calling occurs, let's talk about the defense, I think, a little bit here, and then talk about the offense, and then move to the end, because that's where a lot of people are probably clicking on this. And I'm sorry I don't have a ton of energy to go crazy, but yeah, defensively, they definitely look very, very good, especially in that first half for the most part. I just hit the mic. I'm sorry, I got a new mic. Forgot about that. Hopefully that wasn't too loud for you guys. But the defense didn't look too bad. They were holding Christian McCaffrey pretty well to slow start outside of the first possession that the 49ers had the ball. It seemed like he was moving the ball very well that first possession that they had. But after that, he was slowed down dramatically. Now, in the fourth quarter, he definitely picked it up a lot. And if you just looked at the stats, you probably would think that he had a great game all around. But they slowed him down a lot for most of the game. Deebo Samuel, I don't think had his first possession until the second half. If I do remember correctly, Brandon Ayuk has pretty much taken that number 1 role for the wide receiver since week 5, maybe. I don't quite know what happened there. I expected it to happen. I actually traded Deebo off my fantasy team before his stock plummeted. But Brandon Ayuk seemed to have taken that Deebo Samuel role for the most part, especially once Christian McCaffrey has come in. It seems like Deebo's been erased. George Kittle honestly had a pretty slow or conservative game. Nothing huge outside of that 21-yard first down that was in the second quarter or something like that. But he was honestly held to a limited amount. The defense played pretty solid, if we're being honest. Yes, there was 22 points scored. I want to say it was 22 from the 49ers, but let's look at all these points scored. I mean, how many? The free 3-point field goal at the end of the game, if we're being honest, free. You have 1 touchdown and the missed extra point there. Overall, they did pretty good, and they forced plenty of 3 and outs. They're holding this team to 22, which, by the way, is the average for most points scored by a team in the league. 22 points is average for the entire league per game. So the defense played right about average. Rushing defense, not so much, but passing defense definitely did pretty well. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo, as we all know, is pretty inconsistent, but the defense honestly played pretty solid, especially when they were healthy. Now, once they started getting more injured, the tides definitely turned. Now, on the other side of things, offensively, this team, all over the place. Now, let's not even talk about coaching. Let's not even talk about play calling. I went after that over and over, and I should have a video this week once I start feeling better about what's going wrong with this Chargers offense. I mean, you score 16 points. They haven't scored over expected for weeks, it feels like. Maybe even since the 3rd week in this year. This offense has just been brutal all year long. But Herbert looked pretty solid there. Outside of that interception, I don't really know what happened there. Was there enough pressure and enough of like interference, not an interference, but you know what I mean, to cause that interception. I'm not quite so sure, but the interception at the end was definitely brutal. But the offense didn't get it moving too much. Austin Ekeler played a pretty solid game, but they knew Austin Ekeler was going to be good, so they game planned around him. You still don't have Mike. You still don't have Keenan. Gerald Everett goes down. Trey McKitty is your other number one option with Joshua Palmer. There just wasn't a whole lot going for this offense. Now, they still find a way to get a decent amount of yards, some pretty big chunk plays, but nothing major going for this team. Now, let's talk about the last possession. And that's probably the last thing we're going to end this with. At least not the last possession, but the second to last, where this team goes for it at the 1 yard line. Now, first things first, I want to talk about on that punt, what would he be called? The rule guy that comes on to the announcers comes on and says, within 5 seconds of it occurring, comes on to the commentator's booth and says this 100% is a touchback. He never stopped moving. He never set the ball down, and he traveled back into the end zone. This should be a touchback. But what do the Chargers do? They give no time for this play to get reviewed. I'm not sure the exact amount of time, but it felt like 10 seconds from this play getting whistled at the 1 yard line to the Chargers running that play. Now, it might have been closer to 20, but it sure felt really, really fast. And with the fact that the rule book guy comes on and says, hey, this should be a touchback, and they don't communicate that to refs to slow it down a little bit, kind of on the refs, kind of on the rule people. But if you're Brandon Staley, if you're Joe Lombardi, if you're any of these guys, and you see this occurring, and you're definitely, I don't know if this would be played on the big screen or not, but you definitely should at least slow down the play call a little bit. I mean, the clock's already dead. There's no need to rush your play in there. So why are you forcing the play super, super fast? And that prevents you from getting that touchback. Now you're at your 1 yard line. Doesn't work out too well. Now, even during that, Justin Herbert's fighting for his life, trying not to get a safety there. You end up going for it on 4th and goal, which I think, or not 4th and goal, I'm sorry. 4th inside your own, goal line. You go for this, which I think's horrible. I love Brandon Staley's whole go for a 4th down, I believe in this team, all that stuff. That's a terrible call. Whether that was Joe Lombardi, whether that was Brandon Staley, I don't care. That's a bad call. If you believe in this defense, and I think at the time they still had 3 timeouts, if you believe in this defense, you punt that ball. You hope that defense gets a 3 and out, which, by the way, they did. Technically speaking, when that ball turned over, there was technically 3 and out. Now, it was a field goal instead of punt because the position of the field, but the defense showed how good they were when they got the ball back. Now, if you punt that ball and you put them back at their own 40, their 50 even, put them just slightly out of field goal range, and that defense does the same thing that they did, guess what? Now the 49ers are punting the ball back to you. Yeah, you got no timeouts, but it's still a 3-point game, and you're not forcing a huge play downfield like Justin Herbert trying to go get a touchdown. Terrible play call on that 4th and whatever, inside your own 10. Defensively, did a really, really good job. Incredible goal line stand to prevent that, but I wish I had more energy because I was fuming when that occurred. Why are you going for that right there? Now, as we do every week, I will do the 5 things we learned from this Chargers game. That will likely be up tomorrow or the next day, depending on how I'm feeling. But this game was tough. This team is tough to watch sometimes. Now, I mean, I'm a diehard through and through, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every single moment of watching these games I'm happy, because I'm not. I think Joe Lombardi needs to be out here. I do like Brandon Staley. I think Brandon Staley should stay. Joe Lombardi needs to get out now. Actually, yesterday. Actually, 3 weeks ago. Actually, the second thing started going downhill in week 3, week 4. Joe Lombardi should have been out here. He's just terrible offensive coordinator for an offense with Justin Herbert. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think about this game? Really tough loss. Now, I will say I think the Chargers do sit at the last spot in the wild card, even after this loss in front of the Patriots. Enter next week against the Chiefs. If you get that win right there, you knock the Chiefs off, you're in a pretty solid position. I think I said this on Twitter. If you go 1-1 in these two games, no matter which game you win, you're in a pretty solid position to make playoffs. And I still think the Chargers are in a great position to make playoffs with the remainder of their schedule after this. But winning this game would have sure felt nice. But what do you guys think? If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And as always, I hope to taught something today. I hope I made you smile and laugh, because I'm sure that game didn't. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.